Welcome back. You're still watching Daybreak on this 31st day of January 2023. My panelists here have been engaging on some more details in as far as what's happening in the country, looking at way forward or some of the paths that can be used to resolve some of the concerns that are existent in the political space. Now, I want us to pay some special focus on the counties. And Governor, let me start with you because I had already spoken to Speaker of Wajir about his experience and also the Senator about his experience some 5 to 6 months in. For you, what has it been like getting down to business and establishing your administration and getting to do what you need to do constitutionally, but also achieving your promises?
Yeah, it has been challenging, I have to say that, but we expected that you must realize that we are now 10 years down since the county government started. And in some places, definitely some things have happened. But in some places also, there has been quite some serious challenges. When you start with things like even looking for accommodation or offices from which to operate, and that is almost 10 years down the line of devolution, you find it's a problem. If you also come in and realize that even the planning aspect of what you need to do, because we expected to plan, we expected to have those county integrated development plans and all these kind of things. But when you come in and realize that maybe there was not even a proper, serious or systematic planning. You want to do something in a town, you are told there is no spatial plan. You don't know what should be where. You want to accommodate state officers here and there, you are told there is no accommodation. People are rented all over. The infrastructure is debilitated. So there has been challenges, but we also have to say there have been opportunities because at least you are able to know that these are the kind of things you need to have done for you to be able to offer proper services. Even simple things like budgeting. The law already prescribes how budgeting should be done. But you find maybe, I don't know, either because of lack of some capacity or framework, even the budgeting process was wrong. And you'll come in and you start hearing about these pending bills. And pending bills are so cumulative. Then you realize the problem was not that maybe people are refusing to pay. The framework that was being used was wrong. And even if you tried, you can't. Because if you come in and exaggerate your own source revenue, and you start budgeting with that, and you don't collect this money over the years, then you start running into billions, and there's no service if you look at it. And you're also impoverishing and the business community. So trying to change all that becomes an issue. You may also find, and he's a speaker here, he can tell you that the Constitution prescribes how we should behave, both the assembly and maybe the executive. But you find in some places, again, maybe the politics of survival took over and you undermined those institutions. So people who are supposed to be oversighting are not oversighting. Maybe they're already doing supervision work. Right. So even when things are wrong, they are not able to question because they are part and parcel of that problem. And yet an arrangement could be done whereby development is done in the awards without necessarily undermining the institution of the assembly, whereby you are going in bed with the executive, so you are not able to check. So those kind of things that have happened, and they have really undermined it. Even recently, you saw the debate that has been in Mombasa, the question about the court saying CDF is illegal and CDF. I have been an MP and I know the importance of CDF. But now whether we align that with our constitution and our institution, that should be the debate. But you find sometimes now we start pulling like we are opposing each other, and even sometimes trying to take a shortcut because we just go and amend the law, which may solve a temporary problem, but it's not seeing the long term. Right. That what do we need to do? We need to empower the MPs to some extent to be able, you know, as a leader, when you make certain pronouncements, you can have certain things done. But in the process of doing that, do you now again undermine the institution of parliament as far as its role of oversight is concerned? And you saw like when they talk that abuse of constituencies, I don't know, bursary, things like those. Then now you'll start wondering who will be questioning that. If maybe then you are the person who has been involved in issuing those bursaries. So,
Governor, you've said quite a couple of interesting things, and I want to first of all start with the own source revenue that you talk about, that they were exaggerating their targets.
Yes.
In the financial year 2021-2022, the first 9 9 months, well, the annual target was 976 million shillings, but the first 9 months, your predecessor had managed to collect 227 million shillings, which was 23% below a quarter. Yeah. In the current budget, I see that you're targeting to collect 469 million shillings. I mean, why would a government be so ambitious to over-target, yet you know the realities on the ground of what you're able to achieve?
That's what I told you. That comes about when these institutions start undermining each other. You see, when you propose a budget as the executive, it has to go to the assembly, you know, for scrutiny, for amendments here and there. But what happens, again, as I told you, the political baton takes over. So what was supposed to be a professional document done based on certain information, qualitative information and expertise, is thrown away. Now people will say, no, we want maybe 30 million per ward. Then you start asking, where will it come from? Because the equitable share is fixed. So the only place you can play around with is now to start saying, no, but we can collect more. But you are not putting measures in place that are going to show you can collect more. What are the trends? So on one side, now the professional way of making this budget, the expertise way, is thrown out. Now it is guesswork. And those what you see is a consequence of guesswork. Okay. Because people are there, they are saying we need this money. Then for political expedience, you will say, okay, you put it, but then in that case, we need to get this money from somewhere. We can't get it from the equitable share because that is fixed. So the only thing for this budget to be approved by the control of budget, then you exaggerate your own source. Okay. And I tend to think somehow the Office of the Controller of Budget also plays some role somewhere. Because how they are able to approve such a budget without proof that you are going to be able really to collect these funds and these are the measures you have put in place. But somehow you find it is approved. So in the process now... But
and the layers of approval down there, from the executive to the county assembly.
Yes.
I'm saying...
Yes.
And the layers of approval from the county, what more can the controller do?
No, what the controller should do, if a governor is being twisted by the MCAs, the control of budget is supposed to be like, in my view, somebody who would bring back sense and say, okay, this is what the executive had proposed. This is what the assembly is proposing. Can the assembly tell us?
Okay.
Because at that time, you are the ones who have proposed, not the executive. Can you tell us how you are going to finance this?
I hear you.
Yeah.
Senator, I hope you're taking notes because I want to get something from the speaker. You said that in the current financial year, you're only able to pass the budget in October, not in June, and then in January you go back with the supplementary budget. What went wrong that the preceding House did not manage to pass a budget in June last year?
I think it was just a failure of leadership. There was a standoff between the executive and the county assembly. And I think there were thoughts on the side of the county assembly that were they to pass that budget, then the resources or the budget will not be put to good use. So it was basically lack of leadership, and the budget was not passed in time. So it was pushed forward to us, and we really had a challenge in time because you see, the assembly and the executive ought to have found a functional government so that when the baton is passed, you move on. But for us, we had to speedily put a lot of issues into place. For example, formation of the committees. We had to form the executive because the budget cannot pass without the finance minister passing it to us. So we had a very shaky first 2 months. But thanks God, we were able to do it in time, and by October, we passed the budget. But I just want to comment on what the governor said about the budget. And there are two things. First one is the on-source revenue. There is the ambition, and then there is the effort. Those are two things. My thinking is that we are able to collect more revenues at the county levels as compared to what we are doing right now. It's just a little bit of more effort that is required, and monitoring how those efforts are implemented. Because the reasons behind, or the concept about devolution, is that in about some time to come in the future, you know, this devolution concept was begun in America. And initially, the 50 states in America were getting federal money.
Right.
But today, there are only 3 states in the southern states, that is Alabama, Mississippi, and Louisiana, the states which were originally where slavery was very much practiced. Those are the only states that get money from the federal government. The rest of the states, they are not contributors to the federal government. Right. So the concept of devolution was that in about 30, 40, 50 years' time, after the national government has pumped a lot of money into the counties will either be able to stand on their own and generate sufficient revenue, or better still, they will be able to contribute to the national government and they will not be receiving anything from the national government. But currently, it's just like we are gobbling funds given to us from the national government, and we are not taking stock of what are we doing in order to generate revenue, right, so that we have less burden on the national government. And that is, I think, the way to go. So I think we need to put more effort in this on-sales revenue generation.
Right.
Yes.
And I hear you, because I'm also saying the Control of Budget actually made that report saying that there was no approved budget in the first quarter, but the draft was existent, allocating some 38.8% to development. So you altered this during the supplementary budget, or what did you do?
In the supplementary budget, what we have done is that we took some chunks of money that was meant for development in order to fight and give relief to the residents of the county as a result of the ravaging drought. We have had about 3 years in which we have not received rain. And the backbone of the economy of Wajir is livestock. And currently what's happening is that the entire livestock which was in the county have either moved to Mandera, Garissa, Tana River. So we have internally displaced persons, what I will call climate refugees, who need food because they have left the vulnerable, the children and the mothers. So we needed water, we needed medicine, we need food. We also need livestock medicine because of outbreak of diseases as a result of the accumulation of livestock in certain constituencies, especially the South constituency, Wajir South constituency. So we hived funds that were meant for development fund so that we could put them in recurrent in order to attend to these needs.
Okay.
Yes.
Senator, you listen to this and there has been this concern, and the Control of Budget has reported many challenges. And if you were to spend some time to focus on the on-source revenue, I'm looking at the report of Wajir County, the first quarter of 2016-17, that's say 6 years ago, it was 21.6 million shillings. As of the first quarter of 2022-2023, it has dropped to 9.9 million shillings. For Busia, some 6 years ago, it was about 68 million shillings. It has dropped to 45 million shillings in the first quarter of the financial year that we are in. So are there any suggestions that you'd have as a senator, and as the Senate, what you're doing? Because yes, the county assemblies are the primary oversight against the government of a county. But what more can you do to ensure that things are done with a bit of reality or realism?
Thank you, Gituko, and listening to the governor for Busia and the speaker of Wajir. I'm also getting more enlightened on what happens at the counties, because as you know, the senators, of course, oversight counties, but of course they do that from Nairobi mostly. But what the Senate can do, and I think I may want to dwell on that, referring to what the governor said. He talked about twisting of governors by MCAs, and it is a real actually problem that we have. I think what the Senate can do is maybe to change the law, especially relating to the ouster of governors, so that the threshold of impeaching a governor is raised. so that we prevent MCAs from making maybe sometimes unrealistic demands. And when maybe the governor does not meet those demands, they just impeach him. So what Senate can do, and that is what Senate demonstrated in the case of the impeachment of Governor Kawira Mwangaza, is that we need to raise the threshold of impeaching the governor so that the governor will now do things in a realistic way. Talking about own source revenue, I think there are maybe suggestions that we can make, and most of the counties have actually automated collection of revenue, because we live in these counties, and we know that there has been, big losses, people collecting revenue that's supposed to go to the county, but because sometimes there was not good track, especially when it was that paperwork, talk of parking fee, talk of, all those says and what have you. I think automation of collection of revenue would help counties, and those that have adopted that have actually improved on their own source revenue. But then talking about the reduced collection of own source revenue again over the past like 2 years, and it has been, of course, times have been hard. And so I think when times are hard, they are hard for everybody. And so even I want to believe that even collection of this revenue, because businesses and the sources of income for people whom then the counties collect revenue from have also gone down. And so I think it's about the drought situation, and the Speaker has very vividly, illustrated or how the situation has been in this county. I believe that the pastoralists there, which is the major economic activity, have lost animals, and so I think that is the reason. But
okay, and for you, Governor, because you deal with these figures on a daily basis and the real feel on the ground, what is the reason that own source revenue could be declining over the years?
I think one of the things that we have is what we have just talked about, leakages, in terms of coming up with efficient ways to mainstream everybody to pay their dues. Because it's like recently I did something in Busia. We just reshuffled the people. We were doing an RRI just to see what it is. And we had not even changed the amount the businesses are paying. We just changed the individuals who are now going around and doing it. And I could get calls from some business people that, you people have raised licensing fee. Then I said, but there's a process of raising those license fee. We must go through the assembly, blah, blah. And the whole issue is that these fellows have not been paying what is due. If you're supposed to pay 50,000, they were only paying 20,000, and 5,000 goes to the individual who has been doing it. And that's why that element of automation, as he's talking about it, is also an issue. And even the committee or the finance committee of the county assembly, which is supposed to be thinking through that and even engaging the budget committee. Because you'll find sometimes the budget committee of the assembly is seen like the main thing there. But you see, their thought is just about how to share what is there.
Right.
But you also need the finance committee to be thinking about this question you have asked. Where are these sources coming from? What measures can we put in place? And it has happened in some counties. Right. They just automate, you see their revenue goes up. Others just come up with a completely different institutional framework, and it grows. And I can give examples of some of them that we saw. Like I remember I was talking to the former governor of Kakamega, and he told me they were collecting, I don't know, around 400. Now they're almost at 1.6 billion or something, and they can still go to 2 billion. So it means those frameworks are not there.
Right.
And this is something that maybe even the Senate, as they think through about oversight in counties. Oversight is not just to wait for mistakes. Oversight can also come through giving suggestions to say, we are looking at this has worked well. Why are you not doing this kind of thing? Why are you not doing this? Why is your revenue collection still very archaic, that people are walking around with receipts, with a rope on the road waiting for a matatu? You see, the Senate can also bring about that kind of efficiency to ask the county governments, what measures have you put in place?
Right.
You find, like my county, as I told you, it's a border county. We have got trailers, fuel tankers on the main road. And this is a heavily, densely populated area. So people are waiting for one day a problem to happen. And in assessment of people just say, this is a major border point. What kind of arrangements are here? What is the safety of the people? Yeah, I saw an expose on Citizen, is it a day or two ago? That is the reality of what is happening. Imagine the amount of resources that the government is losing. If we invested in supporting the counties to build up those capacities, it will do better. There is also another thing that the Senate can help us. This thing of unbundling, whereby the activities are being done by the county, but the money is still at the national level. If you look at health, health is devolved. Agriculture is devolved. But look at the budgets that are within those departments vis-a-vis what the counties we are trying to put in agriculture. And yet we are saying that we need to improve on our food security. Currently, there is even this exercise going on subsidized fertilizer.
Right.
But when you sit down with your technical team and ask them, if the chiefs, the DCs, the county commissioners and all these, and the Nyumba Kumi, they are registering people. Now, agriculture being devolved, where is the technical aspect of it? Who is going to make sure that the lands have been tilled? This kind of crop is suitable here. These are the program we have for post-harvest storage, so that we reduce on the wastages. Now, if we want to produce food and we are not going through the whole chain, value chain, then you find there's a disconnect between who is having the resources and who is executing that function. So I think the Senate must
no
really...
communication between, for instance, that program that you talk about, there's no communication between the national government officers.
There's communication, but you see, when you collect the administrators to register farmers, to do all this kind of thing, are you getting me?
Right.
Now, who is preparing for the tillage? As they are registering you, who is going to till? Who is going to make sure that this land you have done, you have 1 acre, you may need this kind of fertilizer in these places, and you may need this. Are you getting me? If that exercise, the government would have said, we want to support the county governments to realize that, and this is our target. You see, it becomes completely different. But if my job is administrative and I'm now being told to register people for fertilizer, other than doing the registration, where are the extension people who are going to make sure that the actual work really happens? Where are the tools that we need to till land? Because sometimes it's not just about giving that. I was just using that as an example.
Okay.
And I'm saying that is where the Senate can completely help us unbundle some of these activities that have been devolved, but a lot of resources are still being held up here. And the major culprit is basically health, agriculture, and water. Those are key areas.
Okay.
Even now, just to add on a bit, you will find that in terms of roads, you'll find the counties doing roads, Kera is doing roads, Kura is doing roads, Kenha is doing roads. Now, in terms of synergy and even coordination, when you talk about urban, where are the urban places? The urban places are in the counties. When you talk about rural roads, where are the rural roads? They're in the counties. Kenha would agree, because that is highway.
That conversation has been going on for more than 10 years. I'm just wondering, why is it not getting resolved?
Now, these are the things I'm telling you that the Senate can help. Even in agriculture, the sugar sector, from the time COMESA safeguards came into place, it was the year 2000. Can you imagine today is 2023? Ask yourself, where has that report gone? What are the implementation mechanisms?
I hear you, Governor. Senator, these are practical challenges that the devolution chiefs are telling you about.
Yeah.
But is there a problem in the setup of the Senate at the moment and how you do your things? Because when you're oversighting, like, I don't know which report you're dealing with now from the Auditor General, from the Control of Budget, is there a problem there that maybe now you need to be more involved in current affairs, even as you focus on historical data and what needs to be probed?
Thank you, Gituko. And Governor here will tell you that Parliament I say parliament because parliament has both the Senate and the National Assembly, mostly operates on, somebody will have maybe to bring a suggestion, and I think the governor can even sponsor, through maybe a member or even as an individual, bring a petition to parliament, and capture all those maybe lamentations that he has talked about. And then the speaker will, of course, direct that or hand it over to the relevant House committee, right, so that this matter can be dealt with. But talking about that, again, there is intergovernmental coordination, which now is the link between counties and the national government. And I know they see it quite often, and the president has delegated this to His Excellency the Deputy President. And so I think these are matters that governors should, of course, even as Senate does what it should, ventilate with the Deputy President, who is coordinating these intergovernmental relations. What Senate can do, and I totally agree with him, that more resources need to be released to the counties, from the national government, especially to health. Like he has said, health, agriculture, those two areas, because those are the most important functions that have been devolved to the counties. And so that is something that we can pursue and maybe see whether we can be able to, maybe through a bill or an amendment, see to it that government releases most of these funds at the national level.
Have you looked at the budget items that the Ministry of Health, for instance, is working on, and have you looked at them, whether there's a possibility of that being done by the particular county?
No. As you know, the National Assembly is actually the one tasked with money bills. And that is why they were discussing it in Mombasa, I think last week, when the MPs walked out because of CDF. So money bills, as per the Constitution, all of them are dealt with by the National Assembly. But we can pass a resolution or a bill, but it will still have to be taken to the National Assembly to be, for approval. Otherwise, Senate.
So where does this conversation go? Is it IBEC? Is it Speaker? What do you think? Because even at the Assembly, you're also looking for more resources, whether it's for the Assembly or for the county. How do you get through this? Because if the Senate has to depend on the National Assembly, or is that other level of conversations that can yield results?
I think one issue that we have about how we set up the National Assembly and the Senate in the constitutional framework that we have, that is, I think, where the problem arose. Because, the concept of a dual house or a bicameral parliament, right, is one in which the two houses somehow act as a check to one another, so that a bill can generate in the Senate or it can generate in the National Assembly and it goes to the other house. But currently, the way the Senate has been established is that it has a defined roles which it can't get out. So it has a limited ability or authority in trying to generate bills. And that most of the aspects in which the Senate could help with the counties, I think their hands are tied. And unless there's a change of how the Senate and the National Assembly, that relationship is redefined, there's not much which they can do. But there are a few things which the Senate can do. The approach to oversight is very historical in nature. But I think there's nothing which prevents the committees in the Senate establishing a link with the assemblies on what improvements can be made at the county levels. Mm-hmm. If you check currently, the county assemblies are supposed to be powerful institutions, not only in terms of oversight, but that's where the bills, the policies, the ideas that are supposed to propel the counties into development are supposed to be generated. But there are a lot of challenges and limitations which are facing the assemblies. Mm-hmm. So if the Senate could take it upon itself to see how they can empower and capacity build the assemblies and probably share ideas, because there is nothing that will prevent. I have an intention of inviting my senator to the assembly when we open, so that he can share with us ideas on how we can move the county forward. So I think they should be...
I'm just wondering, Speaker,
yes.
Because, I mean, without due respect,
yes.
all these political leaders, they have won an election. They're not necessarily experts in what they're coming to do in the House. What are the levels of capacity building have you had, or have the Houses had since 2013 so far?
You see, the assemblies, like in the Assembly of Wajir, there are only 2 MCAs who have been re-elected. The rest are new. So we cannot talk about much capacity building that has gone before. So every assembly has like a large percentage of people who are very new. And I think it is very critical that we need to relook at the aspect of the county assemblies. Because I don't think whether the National Assembly and the Senate can do very much for the counties other than the oversight role. But where real work, what the governor was talking about, it depends very much on the cooperation that exists between the executive and the assembly. Not only in poking holes and finding out problems, but there's supposed to be a partnership.
But the institutions of the assembly, aren't they working? Because at the national parliament, you'll have different offices, like the parliamentary budget office that will be very critical in helping in the budgeting processes. You don't have such at the houses?
The assemblies are working, but what I'm saying is that there is somehow, for example, technical capacity might be missing. Because, you know, issues like standards and policies are still a national issue. So a little bit of empowerment is required to enable the MCAs to equip themselves with the skills which are required for better performance and efficiency in exercising their functions. And the issue of the cooperation is very important, because at the end of the 5 years, it's not only the governor who is going to be held accountable on what progress that has been achieved, but the MCLs also, that is their time. So a little bit of cooperation is required so that we see how we can generate more sources of revenue. We can see how we can hold the county executive accountable in terms of departments in finding out the implementation of aspects of the executive on how that has been achieved. For example, in Wajir, currently there is the ravaging drought. Wajir is about 1/10 the size of Kenya, 58,000 kilometers squared. Nearly 90%, other than the people who are employed in the civil service, are unemployed. They don't have work. And there are huge reservoirs which are proven. 1/10 of the land of Kenya. But for the last 50, 60 years, every year when the rains fail, the people of Wajir depend on the national government and the county government for relief food, so that we get money from development into recurrent. If the national government and the county governments could cooperate on how we could convert that huge land with such a potential, and the people are unemployed, and we have water, then so much can be achieved. So I think there is a bit of cooperation required between the national government and the county government, so that we can convert this rich agricultural land, very rich in terms of fertility, into a breadbasket in the nation.
I hear you. Governor, you were once a new parliamentarian. I don't know, how did you cope? Because if new MCAs are to depend on a new senator who is also trying to learn how to do their job, how did you manage to become an effective legislator during your time?
You know very well that we have had a lot of reforms and in the legislative arms of the government in terms of how do we make them effective in carrying out their functions. And there was collaboration with various entities that came in to support the effectiveness of the assemblies or legislators at that time. And that's how we ended up with those offices that you are talking about, the technical offices. If you went to each committee, you will get experts in that field, whether it's budget, whether it's lands, whether it's legal committee. All those committees are equipped with the experts to help to advise you. Researchers are there to help you do that. Some of the recommendations that they made, which are not being properly implemented, if you find like the office of the MCA, he's supposed to have a manager, some assistant and things like that, and he's given a budget. But look at the kind of people they recruit. Look at how they utilize that resource. Instead of it doing things that are supposed to make you an effective legislator or MCA, it is being used for completely different purposes. And because, again, of political expedience, you find either the Speaker of either house, whether it is him or not, they have no say. They'll just be saying, we have given you 20,000, decide to do what you want to do with it. But if you look at the original recommendations, it was that you're having somebody, this person is not an expert in anything, so we said he must have an office to enable him to serve his constituents.
Right.
He must have an office in the assembly. I think they also have offices there. And they must recruit people then who can help them to carry out their functions. And that does not happen.
Right.
Even MPs, very few of them, despite the heavy budget that they are given, a huge budget to run their offices, those things, nobody evaluates them to say that, are you doing what this thing was supposed to be made for? And that's why you see even when we talk that we have a very high turnover of MCAs, it is because of that.
Right.
Because one thing, you go there, you have nothing. The next thing, you'll narrow down yourself to a very small activities. Either you are chasing per diem here and there, or, you know, even those committee meetings, majority don't attend. You just go there and sign. When something comes on the plenary, you are not even aware, and your signature is there. These are the realities. Nobody wants to talk about them, but that is the reality. You will find a bill or even a motion. Something is just being done by 2 or 3 people who know what is going on.
And so what is the solution?
The solution is what I was telling you, is that we need to strengthen our institutions. And this is what is ailing this country. Like now, when you talk about what is happening in Mandera, and you start saying that, you know, this is recurrent, in my view, it is completely different. Because what is development? What is development? If I built a hospital and I cannot employ doctors, you are calling doctors recurrent. There must be some way of reclassifying this thing and thinking outside the box. A hospital is not just bricks and mortar. A hospital is everything that will make sure that this institution is able to serve, is able to carry out the function that it's carrying out. So when I build brick and mortar, you are happy. You call that development. But to make it effective and operational, you are now saying this is recurrent. We need to redefine some of these things.
Okay.
If there is drought in Northeastern, and you are trying to save cows, you are trying to do what? You know, you are trying to preserve wealth. Now, when we just look at this thing as a cost center, and if cows die, that is okay. But when we preserve this wealth, we come up with measures to, you are looking at it like a cost. You are not looking at it like this should be an emergency, and how do we treat that budget? How do we look at it?
Right.
Are you getting me?
Right.
Secondly, even the office of the Auditor General needs to be strengthened and be streamlined, because so that it feeds back. The consumer of the Auditor General's report is the assemblies, is the Senate, is, you call it what? The other one of MPs.
National Assembly.
I saw you say Parliament and all that. These are the institutions that should be working very closely with the Auditor General. But in our Kenyan perspective, in our mind, it's like the Auditor General is part of the executive. Yet the Auditor General's reports and everything is with these watchdog committees. Right. So how we restructure that, so that when those reports have been done, look at our law, it undermines itself. That even once the MPs have gone through the Auditor General's reports, the Auditor General has already pronounced themselves, the MPs have pronounced themselves, that is still not a legal issue. That now the relevant investigative arms needed to take this thing up. Then after they do that, the implementation committee of the assembly will be looking to say, has the executive implemented? In other countries where parliament is a quasi-judiciary organization, right, once they do that, they already have got linkages with the other institutions. In Uganda, unapata tu pingo hapo. In Zambia, you look at some of the practices in the common. But here, it is just a waste of taxpayers' money because the Auditor General has done, the MPs have looked. I want you to analyze where those reports are, which ones have been actioned, what action has been taken. Then we will see where I'm telling you that there is institutional failure.
Right.
In some of these things that we are discussing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Senator, when you look at this, because, I mean, how many years? 2013 to now, about 10 years of devolution. The learning curve appears to be quite long, and we're not getting where we want to be. I don't know, is there any magic bullet to ensuring that we quicken this process so that institutions start to function effectively as they should, whether there is politics or not?
Thank you, Gituko. I think one thing that is not coming out from the governor and the speaker is the politics in the counties. And I think we may need to relook at our law. Because, like I had said, MCAs can twist the governor because they have the power to impeach the governor. And the threshold, like I had said, is very low. Governors can also twist MCAs, you know, because we know what has been happening in these counties. So that a governor says, I'm not going to bring development to your ward if, you know, if you play your role of oversight or if you are a questioning MCA. So I think we may need to look at this law again as Senate and come up with a law that will make the governor act independently, not exactly independently, but without fear that MCAs can impeach him even without, you know, good reason. We also protect the MCAs from the governors so that the MCAs can do their oversight in the right way without taking advantage and without fearing. How
do you protect them beyond what has been provided for in law?
Yes.
Problem the law or the mannerism?
Yes, yes. By adopting something like the CDF. You know, today as we speak, a member of parliament can stand and criticize the government because at the end of the day, his or her people will not lag behind in development because they will still be given, the CDF. Or a governor will still receive the equitable share of the county, whether or not they praise the government. So we can anchor in law, in my view, a ward development fund, so that an MCA will, because that is what our people look at. You know, these issues of...
But, Senator, is that fair? Because the reason why an MC exists is to represent the people,
yes,
to oversight the executive,
yes,
to legislate.
Yes.
So when you introduce another layer of implementing certain projects through a ward fund, aren't you complicating the matters?
But that's what
the work of the government.
But that is what devolution is all about. You know, much as you may want to say that a member of parliament, a member of county assembly's role is simply to oversight, represent, and legislate, but that is not what obtains at the ground, Gituko. People...
That's what I'm saying.
Yes.
Is the problem our mannerisms? I mean, is it that we don't understand what we're supposed to do as Kenyans, but also as leaders?
Yes, you may have then to first give civic education to our people so that they know that a member of parliament is not supposed to bring development because everybody campaigns on the platform of development, including an MCA. And so we will have them to rethink the whole structure. And then we would have to give, like I'm saying, to give civic education to our people for a long time. Just a minute, Governor. Yeah. So that, because what is happening, and that is what I'm saying, both the Speaker and the Governor are not talking about the politics. What is there on the ground is that everybody wants to be seen to be doing some development. So the MCA will be threatened by the governor, and we know these instances have happened in counties that we know. The governor will also be like threatened by the MCA. If you don't do this for me, then we will impeach you. The governor will be like, if you are the questioning type, like I said, then I'll not bring development to your area. I know of a county, and allow me not to mention which one it is, where an MCA is told, if you do not toe the line by the governor, if you don't toe my line, then every time I come to your ward, I will appoint a ward manager. And this ward manager will be the second runners-up. And that is a person I'm going to build, in quotes, politically, using development in your area. And of course, every politician wants to survive. So they find that they have to toe the line. And so we have to change this structure if devolution is going to work in the way it is intended. Yes.
Running out of time, but Governor, who is twisting the other in your county? Yourself or the MCAs?
Okay, it depends. Like in my case, I may be a bit fortunate because I have a majority. And even what we would call the other members, we are working cordially together. We decided that let us have a full coalition together. So every member, we don't look at any member like outside. So we said the same people who elected me are the same people who elected you. And when sometimes, as I said, you target an individual at the expense of the people, that is not leadership, in my view. This issue about oversight, people tend to think that oversight is completely removed from development. Oversight means that you are looking at what kind of developments are coming in our area, and are we getting value for our coin that is coming in an area. But immediately you convert yourself into a supervisor. Then you lose again that moral high ground to supervise, I mean to oversight. And I think to me, these are the kind of definitions that need to be clear. Because there's a big difference between supervising and oversight. The administrators that we appoint in the wards and all that are supposed to help supervise government programs, but they are not in competition with the MCA, who is supposed to be oversighting. And this is why in our kind of political administration, we said, yes, the executive can propose the budget, but it has to go to parliament for approval and all that. What you are doing, you are sharing that development platform with the parliament to approve and say, yes, these projects are okay, yes, the wards are included, all areas Kenyans are covered, because that's the commonwealth of the county representatives. Just like the assemblies here, up here, are the commonwealth of Kenyans from all places. So when you are scrutinizing these documents, it means you are being given opportunity, because they say public participation is through representatives or directly. And remember, the same constitution says, even the budget-making process, there must be public participation. So it is an elaborate thing. It is us who undermine it by not understanding and interpreting these things properly. Because when you give an MCA to say now, you have a car, a ward car, you have got this, what you are doing, you are creating a recurrent budget around an institution that constitutionally is not mandated to do that. But if an MCA has been given opportunity, he has gone through public participation, he has gone through CIDP formulation, all those ideas of his, he has mainstreamed them. So it means they have been captured, because we can't do development outside CIDP. You don't just wake up ad hoc nowadays in a funeral, in a political rally, and you say, I need water here. You do these things, you sit down, you do public participation, you plan, you put them in your plans. So what remains now is to see the implementation of those plans. But people still tend to think that you will just wake up, go in a funeral, and say, I want water. And then when you differ with the governor or you differ with somebody else, then that changes. It's not a personal conversation. These are things that are already captured in a properly structured way. And you can hold somebody to account that during public participation, this is what we said. In our CIDP plan, this is what we said. In our annual plans, this is what was there. Where is it? So you're already there if you really know what you should be doing.
All right. And Speaker, I'll excuse me, I'll give you the final word. But excuse me, we first take a look at the feedback that Kenyans have been sharing with us via Twitter. Citizen TV Kenya at Sam Gituku. The hashtag to use is daybreak. And Bobo Tiero is saying that President Ruto knows very well what is going on with tax evaders. Remember, he wasn't the former DP. He was the former DP in the last regime. Hence, he has intelligence reports, more so on cartels. Okello Mwalimu is still on the earlier conversation. The big man at the highest echelon of an administration can't be allowed to preside over vengeful, dramatic games by overseeing mass cleansing of graft suspects allied to him on one hand and purporting to initiate audit process of the so-called tax evaders on the other hand. Reverend Harry is saying, let's call a spade and not a big spoon. For sure, tax evaders must pay tax for this country to move on well. For us to realize development, get services, I urge the current regime to be firm on this. Then Godi Baraza, you're saying that some counties are still battling the pending bails monster, while others are struggling with their petitions and court cases that could delay their service delivery. It's time the national government stepped in to ensure counties are sailing smoothly. And Harry, you're saying that if governors and speakers cannot address the runway corruption in their counties, then they have no business receiving money from the national government. You cannot be receiving and appropriating all funds to recurrent expenditure and corruption. All right. And Engineer Lazaro, you're saying that counties should be properly audited before releasing more cash to them. Some of the counties are being run by corrupt cartels with poor management skills. That's exactly what the president is supposed to be doing, not exchange the opposition. And of course, Speaker, as you have the final word, you can see mixed reactions. Yes. People understand devolution differently. People say that counties should be punished for not utilizing resources properly. But the law is very clear that resources have to be sent to the counties regardless of the expenditure. That's a different affair. Yeah. What for you is it that you'd want to see, especially in the year 2023, for the success of devolution?
Yes, some allow me to say something about, because we have been talking about economic development, and there's something very particular in Wajir that I want to address, and that is the power blackout. Just want to let the governor and the senator know Wajir is using a diesel generator that was installed there in 1967. And there has been total blackout in Wajir County for the last, in the county headquarters. Forget about the other towns, but even the county headquarters, there has been no power for the last 2-3 weeks. And you know very well that when we are talking about taxing people and the poor revenue collection, electricity and the power is a critical component for economic development. And at this age, we cannot talk about a county headquarters that is in darkness. That is kind of, I will call it a total shame on us as Kenyans. And that is a national government function through KPLC. So I want, and we are now approaching the month of Ramadan. And it's going to be, because of the drought and the heat, it's about 42 degrees centigrade now. Mm-hmm. I just want to appeal on behalf of the people of Wajir to the president that we, in the meantime, or in the short term, that there should be a generator that should be taken to Wajir in order to deal with this emergency, because it's a very serious matter. We have been discussing this issue for over 60 years, and there is no progress that has been achieved. So a power connectivity to Wajir is very important, because that will propel that county to a higher level of economic development. But as it is now, health services cannot do without power. Okay. Education cannot do without power. Small and medium enterprises are collapsing. And that is even made worse by the drought situation. So I think this is a personal appeal to the president that he should do something about that issue in Wajir. Thank you.
Oh, all right. Governor, I know that was the final word, but there's a supplementary question here. You said that there are certain state officers that do not have housing. You said that there are state officers in Busia who don't have the housing. Who are you talking about?
No, I just say that up to today, we don't have a county headquarters. You know, I was just giving you working premises for state officers. I meant county employees. You'd find they are rented in some, disused buildings that are not even meant for the kind of functions that they are doing. That's the kind of statement when I started opening.
Is there a governor's residence in Busia?
No, there's none.
Speakers?
None. No speaker, they just did one, but it's still not occupied yet.
Deputy governor?
None.
Okay.
County headquarters, none. Road infrastructure, Kura has never done any urban road for the last 10 years in that county. And you wonder that annually a budget has been allocated, but because it comes within the region, and maybe there were certain issues between the county then and the national government employees then the whole county was denied development for 10 years on urban roads. Okay. And those are issues that we are trying now to ratify to see whether we can engage and see that we are able to do them.
Okay. Governor, I think we will have to seek for more time to have these conversations because a lot has been happening and maybe has not been highlighted over the past several years. Thank you.
One thing, if you allow me, that I would really also urge, and this may be the Senate and everybody else, we must have timelines within which, when leaders are elected, the government must be in place. We cannot afford this kind of luxury and waste that almost half a year gone, we are still, in some counties, we are still struggling to form governments.
Okay.
Because of these laws that were put in place that are not really very efficient.
Okay.
We need just to say that within 60 days after elections, governments must be in place. And then measures must be in place to do that so that you start service delivery.
All right, Governor. We need more time, and you'll come. Senator Joe Nyoto, Governor Paul Otuoma, and Speaker Abdile Yusuf from Wajir County. Thank you all for making time for us to spend some time looking at the status of the counties, and we'll continue to do this to get answers, because this was supposed to be the engineers of development. Are they successful? Are they effective? It's a question that we continue to look for answers for. My name is Sam Gituku. Bye for now. See you some other time.